in this video, we're going to be interviewing Trent Van Nieman and Kyle Allen, who are first-time acquirers. They bought 3 auto repair shops in pretty rapid succession to launch GearSteady Garage Group. And so I work with a lot of clients who are looking to buy a business. A lot of times people will say, hey, I want to roll up a bunch of businesses, and they'll say that, and then they'll say when they want to use SBA to do it. And usually somewhere along the path of saying that and actually executing, something doesn't work. Something falls off. I don't know many people who have actually pulled it off. So you guys have pulled that off. And so that's what I really want to dig into and just hear about that story. Trent and I know each other for a decade, probably, here and there over the last decade, but maybe Trent and then Kyle, you guys could kind of take turns giving a little bit of your background and then, what got you interested in buying your own business and in the auto industry.
You want to kick it off?
Yeah, sure. So Trent and I have known each other for about just over 20 years now. We met at Indiana University in our freshman year. So we kept in touch ever since then. We joined the military together. I continued to serve in the full-time in the Army National Guard after college. Trent moved on and got his master's, and we stayed close the whole time. And we've been going back and forth on pursuing an ownership opportunity together for the last number of years, as we have both realized that really ownership provides the best opportunity to achieve our personal and professional goals at this point. We kind of decided that partnership is what's going to work for us. We understand that it doesn't work for everybody, but for us and the skills that we bring to the table, the partnership made the most sense. And so we really started our search in earnest about in January of 2025. And that was just like, we're going to do it. We don't know what we're going to do yet, but we're going to do something.
Yeah.
And so, we just picked up the phone and started calling brokers that we could find with contact info on the internet. We started doing like the BizBuySell searches, all the online listing searches, just to figure out what we think we might want to focus in on, and talk to owners, went and toured, met with owners, met with brokers, looked at businesses. And it was probably, I would say, 3 months or so into our search that we really felt that the auto industry was going to be a good fit for us. And maybe I'll let Trent elaborate kind of why we landed on auto repair.
We really after looking at a ton of industries, we looked at a lot of businesses, and when we started in January, we just built a spreadsheet and we just started tracking everything from there and working through kind of pros, cons, what we liked, what we didn't like. And we kept kind of coming back to, we wanted something more blue collar, services industry, central Indiana. We like to have something like tangible. We looked on Flippa a lot for like online businesses, and we didn't like the intangible effect of that. And, for this round of what we were looking for. And, we like the attributes of recession resistant and resistant to AI. For the most part, we can leverage it to enhance what we're doing. So it started kind of narrowing in what industries we could focus on. And, we saw opportunities. There were several for auto repair shops, and my dad was a CPA, and his whole book of business was dealers. So I grew up around, that world, and, felt comfortable with it. And, we both just felt comfortable with, the auto industry and, what that business model was. So that's how we landed on this one. So,
do you guys like, your car breaks down, are you guys the type of people that are like fixing it yourself in the garage, or like how comfortable do you feel like, Yeah.
Can't even change oil. I have no idea.
I'm the guy that tried to fix it myself and broke something and paid more at the shop to get it repaired. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
Okay. So even though, that was the case for you guys, not feeling like, oh yeah, I can do anything on a car, like you still felt comfortable, like, hey, we can hire the right people or retain the right people, and
mm-hmm.
you can we're not going to be left with a garage full of broken cars and just the two of you trying to figure out what to do with them.
Exactly.
That was worst case.
Yeah.
We're like, let's not have that happen.
Yeah.
So,
And I think that may be something that it ended up playing into a strength for us, is that we knew going in that it was an unfamiliar industry. So the focus on the people, while our most important aspect anyway, is doubly important, because if we lose the people, we can't do that work immediately. So those are gaps that we can't fill. So understanding that is our point of focus from the get-go, I think ended up helping us.
When you started out, so you kind of narrowed in on like, hey, auto repair shops make some sense. I think I remember having some conversation with you, Trent, about like, having more than one could get the numbers up high enough to like make this make sense for you guys to do. So was it kind of pretty early on, was like, hey, we're going to have to acquire more than one of these to start out to make the numbers work?
yeah, we realized that pretty early on, that just the single shop economics just don't really work unless you're an owner operator. And even then, for single shop owner operators, like we've talked to so many that just struggle to really effectively run a shop, and they all look to go into another shop, but they're just limited because they're techs. Again, like we go back to like the hiring aspect, like they can do the work, so they're always caught up in doing the work instead of hiring other people to do the work and focusing on the business side. So very early on, we recognized that to make this work, we had to be a multi-shop unit, to be not owner operators, but more of a management strategy.
That makes sense. You spoke a little bit about like calling brokers, looking at BizBuySell, talking to anyone who would listen. How did you, find one shop initially, and then how'd you end up finding all three of these? Is it the same source, or what? How did that come to pass?
Yeah, we found all three separate independent owners, and all three represented by different brokers. So it was a combination of some of the local brokerages, local to Central Indiana, and then BizBuySell, really. So okay. all three of the businesses were listed for sale.
What about these three? They all relatively the same size of deals and similar profitability or cash flow historically, or was it, hey, we've got one key winner here, one key shop that represents the majority of it, and the others you're going to turn around? Or, give us some, like, we're all three of these kind of work standalone from, I guess, a cash flow perspective.
Yeah. They all, a focal point for us was that, or an important point for us, is that they all definitely worked on their own, varying degrees of how well they worked. They were all cash flow positive on their own. For instance, we have got two rural shops, each about an hour outside of Indianapolis, and one shop in Indianapolis. The Indianapolis shop is our largest one, does the most overall revenue, also more heavily reliant and more personnel risk there. One of our rural shops is a smaller shop. It's only a 4-bay, but it's been a community institution since the early 1970s. And so it's got an extremely solid book of business, and its shops in the area and in the county continue to close down and send their work to our shop out there. So the future, although the upside as of now, without adding infrastructure, may be limited, it's got a very solid book of business. And then our third, one of our rural shops, was a bit more of a turnaround, but we realized that we conduct that turnaround in a efficient amount of time and do it smartly. There's real upside there. So all across all three shops, the risk kind of is balanced to where we aren't assuming too much risk either on the personnel side or financially or with facilities in any one shop. It's spread out kind of across the three.
Yeah, they complement each other. That's what we really liked about them. Like, one was high upside, the other was a turnaround. So we got a good price, good structure on it. And then the other is just we call it our steady Betty, like just keeps running. We don't really have to do a lot of work, and it allows us to focus on the other one. So I think anybody listening to this, like that is thinking about doing a roll up, like think about how what you're buying complements each other. You can't just buy the same thing. I mean, you can if that's your strategy, but like think about how the pieces complement each other well, so that you can figure out how to manage it all together as you continue to grow. I think that's an important piece to think about.
And Trent, we didn't really hear from you at the beginning there with your background. So you'd been in I guess private equity, helping with mergers and acquisitions on the like integration side, I think, or kind of post acquisition primarily. Am I remembering that correctly? And I maybe talk a little bit about that, and like what was that? Did that end up ultimately being helpful, or was it like you're doing that at such a different scale than like this is doing this on your own is just different? How did that help or not?
Yeah. So it's like Kyle said, we went to IU together and both joined the Army, and then I got out of the Army and I couldn't find a job. Didn't like sales. So went and started a business just to pull that thread and see what would work. And I mean, that's, as you said, that's how we originally met. And out of that business, I ended up getting my MBA. And then within that program, I landed at a company called Provo Medical, and it was private equity backed. And, I just started helping them with a lot of their systems and integration work for their acquisitions, because they were going out and, rapidly buying other companies within the imaging equipment space. So that's really where I got my first exposure to M&A. I didn't really even know what it was until my MBA, and I fell into that role. And, from there, kept doing more integration work on the M&A side for mostly private equity backed companies. And I think that exposure, along with starting a business and running one, like has, greatly helped in going through and doing this from the integration side. Like it's, integration is, where you really make your money. I mean, it's how you structure your deal, but it's also how you execute upon the deal after that really matters. So I think that experience has helped us, get pretty stable quick, and really put a plan together and knowing what we wanted to go execute and going out and doing it. So, I think everybody's got to think that way. Like anybody can cut a check, but it's the structure of the deal and how you integrate and execute that ultimately matter for anyone that's looking to go buy a business.
Cool. Yeah. Well, let's kind of dive into the SBA process, because and along with that, I want to know how did the timing work? So you find 3 independent shops, 3 independent brokers, and then how in the world did you get it to all kind of align? And I think if I heard right, like they all closed relatively close to each other, or maybe at the same time.
Same day. Yeah.
Same day. Wow. So yeah, how did that happen? And talk a little bit about that.
Kyle was our pseudo attorney managing document control. We had an actual attorney, so but was managing everything. So Kyle, you could probably talk. You were juggling a lot more of that than me.
Yeah. We had someone told us when we said we were looking to do 3, it might have been our bank, who our bank was on our side the whole time, and a huge factor in why we were able to get 3 done. But they were like, "You guys really want to do this? It's going to be a lot." And we were like, how much can it really be? But it was a lot. It was a lot. 3 sellers, 3 deals, 3 structures, 3 sets of documents. It was a lot to manage. But keeping it organized was key. And then as far as how it all came together, I think we mentioned that we started our search in earnest in January. We had our first shop under LOI by late May, our second by early summer, I want to say June or July, and then our third, late July, early August. And we closed that third in just about 45 days. We closed right at the end of August, 29 August. So luck certainly played a factor. But we did a lot of research and we were confident in what we were willing to pay for the business for each shop independently. That brought it all together, and made it work as one. So, we had a little bit of grace in terms of a seller that was not in a hurry, because we had him under LOI late May and didn't close until August. And then we had some grace with sellers who wanted a quick close as well as our last one to get signed, and they were quick to come to the table. So, I think in terms of how we were able to get it to come together, understanding what motivates the sellers, what's important to them, and then structuring that around where you can meet in the middle and compromise and find what works, structure, number-wise, fair price that works for everybody, keeps everybody as happy as possible as they're coming to the table. And there was a while, at least probably a month or two, where we didn't think we were going to get three because we had a candidate for the third who ultimately fell off due to poor financial record keeping, really fell off of our timeline. And we actually had to leave an offer on the table for our third shop that we ended up getting. But, it was that offer was on the table for, almost a month or two.
Yeah.
Before the sellers came around to accept. I think to answer your question, organization was key, was huge. Understanding what motivates the sellers in order to keep them interested and get them to the table. Understanding what you're comfortable with, both structure and price point wise. And then, don't be afraid to say, this is the best I can do, and leave it set.
Trust your valuation.
Yeah.
We repeated that over and over. Trust our numbers.
Yeah. Yep. It's there for a reason. And then a little bit of luck never hurts you.
Think about just, so I'm helping clients like through the SBA underwriting process. That's a process for just one acquisition deal. How did the lender look at it? Maybe it worked okay because each deal cash flowed on its own. So did they basically underwrite each one individually? Mm-hmm. And how much did they force you to say, okay, what does this look like with all three of these together? Were they making you do that work and show, hey, here's what we think the model looks like? And
we use your ProjectionHub model for auto repair shops. So we did use that for it, but we looked individually and then as a whole too. We looked at all of them to make sure it all cash flowed. But obviously, if each individual unit cash flows and looks good, then as a whole they should.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I mentioned the bank that we ended up working with, and I think they were really key in getting us all three across the line. And because we spoke with several different banks, received term sheets from several different banks, and some lenders really criticized our experience in the industry and our ability to run three as one full-time and one part-time owner. But the bank that we ultimately went with was the bank that shared our vision. So getting them comfortable with us and what we plan to do, not just with our first three, but with the enterprise in the future, committing to working with them first, and then sharing that vision with us, I think really helped the lender become comfortable with the prospect of a roll up of three at one time.
Yeah, find a lender that trusts and believes in you and not just in the numbers. If they're just checking the box on the numbers, got to find someone that believes in what you're doing. I think that was a big part in helping us get these three done. And the only other caveat is just going back to the question of how we got it closed, setting expectations with the sellers and communicating that early was really key. We weren't afraid to over communicate and tell them hey, we're going to close in 4 months and we're trying to get three done. And just setting that expectation was really important to do so that we didn't, miss a line or go back and surprise anybody. Because when you surprise sellers late in a process, it doesn't usually go as well. Yeah. So
yeah. I've heard it said that, and I've felt this, that every deal that ends up closing dies at least once somewhere along the way? Was that, and I feel like, it's got to be even more so with multiples at once. So you kind of spoke to it, like one deal that was kind of on the table, off the table, like how many times did you think, well, shoot, this whole thing's falling apart? How often did that happen?
Yeah. Two of the three that we got, our shop in Indianapolis, and then one of our rural shops we didn't think we were going to get. I mentioned that we had to leave an offer on the table and walk away from the rural one. And then we initially thought that the Indianapolis location was just out of our reach. But it ended up that sellers were motivated, and we were able to put forward an offer that was fair to everybody. And so it was, there were a lot of late night phone calls wondering if we were ever going to be able to move anything across the finish line, let alone all three. But yeah, I would say by the time we had all three under LOI just about 45 days prior to close. So, early to mid July. And at that point, we were confident that we were going to do everything we could to get these things done.
Mm-hmm.
And until you got that third one, were you trying to move the others towards closing, the first two, or were you saying, hey, this doesn't actually work for us to do what we want to do with only two? We need additional revenue. Or would you have gone ahead and closed on the two and then tried to acquire a third at some point in the near future? But I guess was it a all or nothing feel, like you needed three to even be willing to personally guarantee these SBA loans, and or
the two we had, we felt comfortable with because they were closer together, and the numbers all worked. And it was the third one, they didn't necessarily want that offer and wanted to keep negotiating. And we just told them it's our best offer, and we have two we're prepared to move forward with, because it sat for a little bit. And once we sent the email that we were moving forward with the other two, and they either have to accept now or not sell at all, then they ended up accepting. So, and it wasn't like it wasn't like trying to put a gun to their head. It was just, hey, this is what we're going to do. If you want to take it, here it is. If not, it's your choice. But, that was ultimately how we got the third, and we just, when they said yes, we just rolled with it.
That's great. A few more things I want to hit on. So if you're willing to share, I imagine, after the acquisition. So did the employees know at each of these, and what was that like day one? Like, all right, we're the owner now, not of just one business, but three. We gotta go build relationships with these employees. And what was that first 30 days like or so, and any learning that you could share with others trying to either acquiring their first or acquiring their first three?
Yeah. So the interesting lessons learned for us is that each of the three, the dynamic of each of our three shops has been pretty different, and the first 30 days was relatively different as well. So the one of our owners still works for us and plans to work for us longer term. He's sold, and he just wasn't ready to retire yet. So he still provides consistency day to day in one of the rural shops, which is great. The other one of our rural owners were the only two employees. They added a third employee shortly before we closed, and he was tracking the transition pretty much the whole time. And we had met him a couple times before we closed. The third location, our biggest location, they found out just maybe a week to a week and a half prior to closing. The previous owners told them they didn't want to assume any risk with the deal falling through, which we could understand. And as far as I mentioned the location where our owner is still working for us, he was advised by his broker to not tell anybody until the deal is already done, because that broker had some more horror stories happen to him in the past where, employees walk away or stop showing up or whatever the case may be. And so we didn't meet those guys until after the deal was already done the next week. But I think, you can't really understate how as nerve-wracking as it can be as new owners, it can be just as nerve-wracking as employees that are transitioning underneath transitioning owners. And I think the unspoken part, the words that aren't spoken in the room, is everybody wants everybody to keep working. For the most part, the employees want to keep their jobs, and we, as the owners transitioning in, absolutely wanted them to keep their jobs. So for us, the best approach was just to tell everybody that, like, you guys have acknowledged the work that they've done in their communities for as long as the shops have been open, and commit to upholding that reputation and asking them to, buy into our vision and stay with us. And there's we offered, certain like retention incentives to employees to help, put the money where the mouth is, in that regard as well, to show them that we're committed to them. We haven't lost any employees that were pre-close are still retained in each shop. We haven't had to let go anyone as of yet.
That's great.
Restructured things, new job titles, new responsibilities. Yeah, pay up to market, retention, like you mentioned. And I think like anyone going to do this, like have a plan for the people. Don't just expect to walk in the door and it's going to be hunky dory day one. Like they don't know you. It's a big change for them. And they're always asking, like, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for my job? And if you can be planned in how you're going to convey that message and make them feel comfortable, that's really important. But then also showing a vision of like, we are buying this and this is why, and this is what we believe in, and back it up with a plan around the people of, what their job is, what their pay is, their responsibilities, and like really take time to think through your people plan, and be ready to adapt quickly after you close, so that you're, retaining key people and keep, you didn't buy it for it to go under, you bought it to grow it. So make sure you put that plan in place.
Cool. Maybe two more questions for you. I want to just get your take on kind of future plans. And so I think probably the plan is that these won't be the only 3 shops you ever have. I imagine. You're probably thinking about other acquisitions. So maybe talk a little bit about that. And then I guess just personal curiosity, I was thinking about any business you think about, what are the risks of, like, how will this industry fare? Is it AI resistant or whatever? Maybe talk a little bit about maybe not AI resistant, but electric vehicle resistant, or does that change anything? I say that, and I just saw yesterday that Ford shut down their electric vehicle truck business, took a $19 billion charge off on that or something. So, seems like combustion engines around for a while still. But yeah, just curious about, those 2 topics, growth plans, and then just, how you think about, do you think at all about how it would change as electric vehicles potentially change things?
So to answer the first part of your question, what do we look forward in the future? What do we look for next? We've already got our sights set on the next round of shops to bring in under the company. We don't know when that's going to happen yet. We're targeting mid to late spring, best case. If it can happen sooner, we'll take it. And a point to mention for someone who may aspire to do something similar to what we're doing is we asked our bank team up front, like, if we want to close another acquisition inside a year, what does that look like for you guys? How much, to what extent will you entertain that? How long do you need to let the loan season and prove that we can pay the bills before you're willing to entertain it? And so, we were aware of our bank's willingness to do another acquisition before we closed, which helps frame, how we attack the next round of acquisitions. Is it going to be through our bank? Is it going to be through independent funding sources, third-party funding sources? So we started to generate those options for ourselves. That way, when we narrow down the targets and get them under LOI, then we've got kind of a couple different courses of action to go after and secure that financing. Primarily convincing our bank that it's a good idea.
Yeah.
And then to answer this, you got anything to add to that part?
No, I mean, we just plan to grow, buying more.
Yes. And then to the second part of your question, fortunately, the electric vehicle market at least in Indiana, we are slow to adopt. I see more electric vehicles on the road every day, but Indiana generally lags behind the rest of the country in adoption to that sort of technology, at least as of right now. Additionally, something that works in our favor and also for right now may change in the future, but the cost of new vehicles is high and rising, and the average age of the average vehicle on the road is about 11 years, and it's getting older. So the need to maintain those vehicles continues. The need to maintain those vehicles outside the manufacturer warranty continues. So we think the market for independent automotive repair will continue to be strong, especially people focused and community focused and relationship focused. Independent auto repair will continue to be strong. And then, if and when those factors change, when EV adoption speeds up or new car prices come down, we will adapt. We'll have to adapt. So we've, it already kind of started mapping out what does it look like if we have to implement, company sponsored EV training for our guys who are willing, our younger techs who that may be their future. So what plan does that look like, and how long would it take us to action something like that? And then what does business look like if we start to lose business because the used car or the new car market undergoes a strategic shift and cars are much more affordable? How much wiggle room do we have in the budget and the numbers to be able to maintain the quality of life for our employees and continue to grow, or do we have to focus on stabilization? So, running a few different of those scenarios and just kind of game planning how we would attack those situations, I think keeps us prepared for whatever the future holds. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's great. You got me sold. I think, it seems like a solid industry, and yeah, I think I like it even better than the, HVAC world that everyone kind of wants to be in. HVAC. I think I like this better. I think there's probably maybe a little less competition too, potentially. I don't know.
Because it's usually when we tell people, we bought a business. They're like, oh, that's awesome. What'd you buy? We're like, an auto repair shop. The immediate reaction is like, oh, like that's what we bought. That's all we get it from most people. And we're like, okay, that's fine, because it means there's opportunity there. And I think that's what we realized. Like, we're not private equity. We're not flush with cash. Like, we needed to find a space that we could play in, and we could actually go and acquire businesses. And, nobody's really looking at this as an opportunity. And, you got to be able to find opportunity where others don't. And that's where we actually see that being a benefit when we hear that. But think about it, like, everybody drives. Like, is anybody taking buses, trains? Everyone drives here. In Indiana, Crossroads of America, it's one of the highest road miles in the entire country, the state of Indiana. And, there's not really great infrastructure around EVs, uncertainty around moving towards hybrids. Like, this is going to stay around. Thesis is this is going to stay around and be relevant for many more years. And, that's why we really find this, see the opportunity here. And just one caveat of, like, when we looked at this, like, yes, we're not from the industry. And, that was, everybody said we were crazy to do this. Even the owners we bought from said we were crazy. But when we talked about how we were going to run this and why we saw the opportunity, all of the owners and people that we talked to that understood this industry, like, yes, this makes sense, because, owners of auto repair shops are former mechanics. they don't know how to run a business. So if you go in and can let someone run the day-to-day and you run the business, it's the best complement. And that's really when we started getting more confident around our thesis to pursue this industry, was number one. And then number two, like I talk to people and they're like, well, I want to be in this industry or that industry. I'm like, don't think of industry, like think in systems, think of how the business operates, of how like you bring in customer, vendors, your employees, how you actually service the business, how you get paid, how the cash flows through. Cash flow is very important. Like anyone, model your cash flow and understand how it moves through the business. But we thought in systems, and that's where I took the imaging equipment business because we bought a bunch of service businesses there, and it's the same system. It's just they're Texan vans servicing MRIs and ultrasounds, on site at hospitals instead of a mechanic within the four walls of a shop. But the business is exactly the same. It's just different product and similar expertise actually. So, when we looked at it from a system standpoint, we're like, hey, we understand this. And that made us even more comfortable when we looked at it that way. So like anyone that's looking around, like, where do I start in an industry? Like, don't think about the industry. Think about what business models you understand and what you prefer, because that's really important. And last thing I'll say, and then I'll stop talking, is just the cash flow. Like, I like to say, like, cash is king, as everyone says, but cash flow is queen. It is very dynamic. That's how you win. Like, you have to think of how the cash flows through the business. And, the other business I had, the biggest problem of it was that you were always, funneling working capital back into the business to grow the business. And then you were on net terms and had an AR that you were carrying. So you were always funneling your working capital back in. And like, that's a big part of why we love this industry, is like cash on receipt. As soon as you're done, you get paid.
Yeah.
You buy your inventory pretty much same day. I mean, we don't really carry inventory because of parts houses. And then we sell basically same day or next day and collect upon receipt. So your cash conversion is incredibly fast. So like, you've got to think of those things when you're looking at a business, and you can't just think of like, hey, the numbers all check out and like, I like this industry. It's, go a layer or two deeper and think in systems and cash flow.
Yeah, that's great. And I was just thinking too about like one of my thoughts or fears. I've never really seriously considered like acquiring a trades business or something that, HVAC business or auto repair, because I don't know the first thing about that, and would feel very, very scared that everyone that knows what they're doing would walk out the first day. Right. But to the idea of acquiring multiple and all independent, if you did end up having a challenge in one of the, like a people challenge in one of the shops, which would, if that was going to happen, probably would have happened right away, you would at least have a couple other, you could probably borrow some people. Hey, this isn't a long-term solution, but I need you to go to the drive an extra 45 minutes. I'll pay you for it, but like, go man the shop here for me for a day, or, fill in gaps. And that just like de-risks the whole thing versus if you had just bought one and had a key personnel leave and take a couple buddies with them or something,
It's a lot harder, like, because we looked at HVAC and electrical too. And like, anyone can go buy a Sprinter van and slap a logo on it and, throw up a, quick website and a phone number and start doing business. And, that's what we didn't like about those service-based industries. And also, for me, seeing behind the curtain and how expensive it is to manage a fleet, I liked the aspect of owning real estate versus having to manage a fleet that is a depreciating asset that you're constantly putting, repairs into and turning over your fleet and insurance. And it's a lot more expensive than what people think when you actually model the numbers out. So that's where like we liked the real estate versus managing a fleet aspect, but also it's a higher barrier for an employee to leave and start their own on the mechanic side versus being able to just spin up a website and, get a van. And I think that's what we really like too. And, obviously they can jump to other shops and that can happen, and we have to manage that risk. But that's where, like we said earlier, your people plan is like number one, no matter what business you're in. It's all the people that drive it, it's systems, processes, that all comes, but not the right people. You can't put any of that in place effectively. So I think that's really how we viewed it on the mechanic side and what we liked about it, but always a risk. I do like the floater idea.
That's a pretty good one.
We do have an idea of hiring someone.
Yeah.
Just
to fill in wherever needed.
Yep. Get a company truck or van, make it mobile with tools in it. And, hey, you're just a floater and you go to wherever we need you for the week or for the day to fill in. Like, a guy has a vacation. Okay, go to this shop. Schedule's full. Then we don't have to worry as much about, vacation, sick time. That's benefits of scale. So that'll be a good problem to solve when we get to that. But it's kind of the thought.
Well, guys, I really appreciate you being willing to share, and sounds like you're doing some cool stuff. So I'll let you guys get back to it, but thank you for being willing to jump on and share your story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any last words from either of you that you'd like to share?
Yeah, just don't be, there will always be a reason to not pull the trigger, to not sign on the paper. But at the end of the day, if you've got confidence in yourself to execute on the plan that you've built, and you think there's a solid foundation there in whatever business or industry you're drawn to or you've decided on, just do it. I wish I would have done it 10 years ago.
I don't have anything better to say. So I think if anyone's thinking about this, we're always happy to help. We love talking shop and talk about business. And, if anyone needs help, feel free to reach out. And we're happy to do so.
Yeah.
That's great. Thanks, guys. That was good.